From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Wednesday, April the 26th, 2017. Another attempted stabbing took place today in the West Bank, just about 24 hours after a similar incident at the very same location. A Palestinian man armed with a knife came at IDF soldiers stationed outside the Samaria Regional Brigade headquarters in the northern West Bank. Troops shot at him before he was able to harm anyone. The terrorist was taken to Beilinson Hospital in Petah Tikva in serious condition. We reported to you yesterday of an almost identical incident at the same IDF base. The attacker there was said to be a cousin of the man who tried to stab the soldiers in today's incident. There are reports this morning of a possible visit to Israel by U.S. President Donald Trump next month. Hebrew media, including Israel's Army Radio, reported today that talks have been going on for a few weeks about the possible visit, which would be the president's first to Israel. Officials cited in the reports mentioned the arrival dates being around May the 21st. If Trump, in fact, does visit Israel during this time, his trip would likely coincide with the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem on May the 23rd and 24th. Ynet reports that Israeli representatives and a U.S. envoy will meet tomorrow to begin talks on the subject. Convicted Palestinian terrorist Razmeh Odeh pled guilty today in a U.S. court to immigration fraud, specifically to hiding her terror past when she applied for American citizenship some 13 years ago. The 69-year-old was convicted in Israel back in 1970 of 2 bombings, including one that killed 2 young men at a supermarket in Jerusalem. She was sentenced to life in prison in Israel, but was released in 1979 as part of a prisoner swap. When she applied for a U.S. visa in 1994, she did not disclose that information and has been in several legal proceedings on the subject for several years. She accepted a plea deal yesterday which specifies that she be stripped of her U.S. citizenship and deported, likely to Jordan, to avoid going to jail in the U.S. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said today that a major cyber attack was prevented this week in Israel. The office said that the National Cyber Authority carried out an investigation and discovered the plan after collecting a number of testimonies. They said the attack targeted about 120 organizations, government offices, public institutions, and private individuals. 10 people suspected of being involved in the 2015 terror attack at a kosher supermarket in Paris have reportedly been arrested this week. French news agency AFP reports that the suspects include an arms dealer and are part of an ongoing investigation into the terror attack at the Hypercacher market on January the 9th of 2015 that claimed the lives of 4 Jewish men, Yoav Hatab, Philippe Bram, Johan Cohen, and Francois Michel Sada, who were shot and killed by terrorist Ahmadi Coulibaly. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley addressed the plenary assembly of the World Jewish Congress yesterday in New York, telling the 600 delegates from across the globe that it was a new day for Israel at the UN.
The United States will no longer be silent as Israel is unfairly attacked at the United Nations. The anti-Israel bias that has existed for so long at the UN is cut from the same cloth as the BDS movement and the global rise in anti-Semitism. They all seek to delegitimize Israel. They are all efforts to intimidate her friends and embolden her enemies. As long as I'm America's representative at the UN, I'm going to stand for human rights and I'm going to stand for the truth. And that means I'm going to stand for Israel.
And the state Senate of Minnesota took a stand against the BDS movement this week. It passed a measure on Monday against companies that boycott Israel. The vote of 57-8 follows a similar bill passed earlier by the state House, 98-28, which prevents Minnesota from dealings with companies that participate in the BDS, Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions movement that seeks to delegitimize the state of Israel. The bill now awaits the signature of Governor Mark Dayton, which would make Minnesota the 19th state to pass such pro-Israel legislation. Several Jewish groups were involved in pushing for the legislation, including the Jewish Community Relations Council of Minnesota and the Dakotas. And taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Wednesday, April the 26th. At 7, it's from the Aleph Bet. At 7:30, Alan Dershowitz discusses challenges facing Israel. At 8 o'clock, Shalem College's Daniel Gordis speaks about the high price of Jewish statehood. At 9 tonight, Mark Golub sits down with American-born Israelis Josh Malkman and Kayla Doolin, who each served in the IDF and who are visiting the U.S. to combat BDS on college campuses. That's on tonight's L'chaim, which is followed by another discussion with Israeli soldiers at 10:30. And coming up right after this newscast tonight, it's Thinking Out Loud with Micah Halpern. And that's the JBS News Update for Wednesday, April the 26th, 2017. I'm Teisha Bader.